Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
Late fee nightmare. I have always prided myself on keeping my bills in order. Rent, paid. Utilities, paid. HOA fees, paid like clockwork every year. So imagine my confusion when, earlier this year, a crisp white envelope showed up in my mailbox with my HOA's logo stamped in the corner. I opened it without much thought, expecting the usual yearly payment reminder. Instead, I found a letter stating that I owed HOA for failing to pay my dues on time. It had to be a mistake. I sat down at my kitchen table, pulled up my bank statements, and there it was, a clear, undisputable record of my payment on January 2nd. The dues were $450, and I had sent them electronically the same day I always do. Confident that this was just a clerical error, I called the HOA office to straighten things out. The phone rang 5 times before going to voicemail. I left a message. Hi, this is my name. I just got a notice saying I owe a late fee for my HOA dues, but I've already paid. Can someone call me back so we can clear this up? Simple, right? Weeks passed. The phone never rang. Then, in early March, a second notice arrived. This one was more aggressive in tone, stating that the late fee had been added to my account balance and warning me about possible additional penalties. Furious, I grabbed my phone and dialed the number again. Straight to voicemail this time. I left another message, my voice a little shakier than I intended. Hi, this is my name, again. I already left a message a few weeks ago about the late fee notice I received. I paid my dues on time, and I have proof. Please call me back. No one did. By mid-May, I was no longer annoyed. I was angry. A third letter had arrived, and now they were threatening legal action. The late fee had grown from $50 to $250, with processing fees tacked on for good measure. Processing. It wasn't like anyone was answering the phone or processing my messages. I called again, and again, and again. Always voicemail, always the same robotic message. I even emailed this time, attaching screenshots of my bank statement and payment confirmation. This needs to be corrected immediately, I wrote. I have already paid my HOA dues, and I do not owe a late fee. Please confirm receipt of this email and let me know how we can resolve this. No response. By August, the situation had spiraled into something almost surreal. Another letter showed up. This time from the envelope had that cold, sterile look that made my stomach drop before I even opened it. The letter informed me that my account had been sent to collections, and I now owed $1,200, which included lawyer fees and additional penalties. I was livid. I emailed the law firm immediately, explaining the situation from the beginning. This has been a mistake from the start, I wrote. I have proof that I paid on time. I have been trying to contact the HOA for months with no response. Please review the attached documentation and let me know how we can fix this. Their response was maddeningly polite. We have reviewed your documentation and contacted the HOA. They maintained that your payment was delinquent. You currently owe $1,300. Should you wish to dispute this, please provide additional evidence, keeping in mind that further communication may incur additional legal fees. Additional legal fees? I gripped my phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I called the law firm directly, hoping to talk to a real person instead of sending yet another email into the void. After waiting on hold for nearly 40 minutes, a bored-sounding woman finally picked up. Yes, this is regarding my HOA account, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. There's been a mistake. I paid my dues on time, and I have proof. Let me pull up your file, she said. I could hear her typing in the background, followed by a pause. Okay, I see here that your account was marked as delinquent. You currently owe $1,300, including lawyer fees. If you'd like to dispute, I already disputing it, I snapped, cutting her off. I've sent emails. I've left voicemails. I have that I paid on time. Why am I being charged these ridiculous fees? The woman sighed, as though I had personally ruined her day. If you have proof of payment, you can email it to our office, and we'll review it. But keep in mind that lawyer fees are non-negotiable. Those charges will remain on your account. I wanted to scream. Instead, I gritted my teeth and said, fine. I'll send the email again. I sent the email again. A few days later, I got their reply. After further review, the HOA stands by its claim that your payment was late. If you wish to escalate this matter, additional lawyer fees may apply. Your total balance is now $1,400. I stared at my screen in disbelief. They were charging me $100 per email now? Just for trying to defend myself? By November, I was at my breaking point. My mailbox had become a dumping ground for increasingly threatening letters from the HOA and their lawyers. Each one was more absurd than the last. One letter even hinted at the possibility of a lien being placed on my home if I didn't pay. At this point, I wasn't even sure what I owed anymore. The original $450? The late fee? The lawyer fees that seemed to multiply every time I so much as about sending another email? The total had ballooned to somewhere around $1,500. And I was no closer to understanding how this had all gone so horribly wrong. I tried one last Hail Mary. I wrote a long, detailed email to the HOA and the law firm, attaching every piece of documentation I had, my bank statements, screenshots of my payment confirmation, copies of the letters I'd received, and a timeline of every call and email I had made. "This is harassment," I wrote. "I will not pay a single cent more until someone explains to me why I'm being charged these fees. I have provided ample evidence that I paid on time, and I expect this matter to be resolved immediately." The response came the next day. It was short, almost gleeful in its coldness. "We have reviewed your case and found no evidence to support your claim. Your balance remains $1,500. Payment is due by December 13th to avoid further action." Further action? What did that even mean? Were they going to take me to court? Garnish my wages? Show up at my house and repossess my lawn chairs? As I sat there, staring at the letter in my trembling hands, I felt a wave of despair wash over me. I had done everything right, paid my dues, kept my records, followed up, and still, this nightmare had only gotten worse. The holidays were just around the corner, but all I could think about was the December 13th deadline looming over my head. What would happen if I refused to pay? What would happen if I did? I didn't have the answers. All I had was a stack of letters, an empty inbox, and a creeping sense of dread that this was far from over. If it's with a debt collection lawyer, then wouldn't it fall under consumer law on debt collection practices? I am not a lawyer, and if I were you, I would contact one just on the grounds that I would rather spend $2,000 fighting to pay a $1,000 bill I don't know than to pay the bill. This said, here's my practical advice. I would mail certified to both the debt collection lawyer and the HOA something like this. "Dear jerks, I have received numerous letters saying I owed a late fee for my homeowner's bill, which I do not in fact owe. Every month when I received one of these notices, I called the number listed for your HOA 555-555-1212 and left a voicemail. Most recently, I have received a letter from a debt collection lawyer telling me I owe X amount and additional lawyer fees for a total of Y. The law firm has refused to accept the attached proof that I have paid the HOA dues in full on time. This has caused me much emotional stress and feels like targeted harassment at this point. Attached is the proof of paying the HOA fee on time for the last X years. Additionally, to the law firm of Jerks & Associates, I dispute this debt. I do not owe this debt. These fees are late fees and would require me to be late on my payment, which the attached items prove I have not been. Unless you can provide written proof to me being late, these fees are invalid and this debt is invalid. Further, if you cannot provide proof of me owing this debt, then you are to cease immediately all communications with me under the Fair Debt Collections Act. If you can provide proof of me being late, then I am happy to pay it immediately. Have you redacted a bank statement showing the payment and emailed that to the lawyer? I was sued and they dropped it and had to pay their own lawyer fees after I sent proof that the HOA is incompetent. If you can't prove you paid it, then send the payment with the late fee to the lawyer to avoid getting sued. You can get your phone log if you log into your online account with your providers. It won't have the voicemails you left, but will show the call and duration. Once you show the bank statement where the funds were paid, this nonsense stops. You don't need to show the rest. Send a certified letter to the HOA and a copy to the collection lawyer. State the bill was paid, on time. Attachments of proof enclosed. Then state if they do not take care of this misunderstanding immediately, you will sue FR3X the fee amount for knowingly dishonestly charging them, for damaging your credit rating, for refusing to respond to emails and phone calls to belay the situation, and for repeated harassment over the course of a 12-month period, and, finally, emotional distress. If you hire an attorney to write the letter, it will make a much bigger impact, but could cost a few hundred for them to do. Otherwise, send out the letter yourself. Either way, they will have to respond. If not, take them to court. You should be awarded 3x the fees in these circumstances. If you like our stories, then please like and subscribe and comment, and remember to hit that bell icon so you never miss out. We have new stories almost every day. Last weekend, I went to a party at my friend Mike's house, and the second I turned into his neighborhood, I knew something was off. The streets were clogged with parked cars, packed so tight on both sides that it looked like a game of Tetris gone wrong. I slowed my car to a crawl, gripping the wheel and praying I wouldn't scrape someone's bumper or side mirror. Every few feet, another car squeezed by in the opposite direction, forcing me to inch closer to the maze of parked vehicles. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was maddening. By the time I made it to Mike's place, I was already annoyed. His driveway was full, of course, and the street outside his house offered no relief, just more cars crammed together like sardines. I ended up parking 3 blocks away, in the only spot I could find, and hoofed it back to his place in the sweltering evening heat. When I finally made it to his front door, I didn't even bother pretending I wasn't furious. My heart was pounding from the frustration and the walk over, because, of course, there was nowhere to park near his place. The whole neighborhood looked like a circus of cars crammed into spaces they didn't fit, double parked, and even perched halfway on lawns. I jabbed the doorbell a little harder than necessary, my irritation spilling over as I waited. The door swung open, and there was Mike, casually leaning against the doorframe like he didn't have a care in the world. A cold beer was dangling from his fingers, condensation dripping onto the threshold. The audacity of his relaxed posture nearly made me see red. "What the hell is going on with the parking around here?" I demanded, skipping any attempt at pleasantries. My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. Mike didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. Instead, he let out a low laugh, the kind that could drive someone already irritated completely insane. "Welcome to my neighborhood," he said, grinning like this mess was the most natural thing in the world. He tipped the bottle toward me, completely unfazed by my outburst. Like this chaos was just part of the charm of living here. "This can't be normal," I said, gesturing wildly toward the street. "I mean, it looks like everyone's hosting a block party." "Nah," Mike replied, taking a sip of his beer. "This is just how it is. Every day." "Every day?" I repeated, incredulous. "How do people even live like this?" "It's the HOA," he said with a shrug. "They fine everyone $50 for parking on the street, but nobody cares. They just treat it like a monthly parking fee." I stared at him, waiting for him to admit he was joking. He didn't. "So you're telling me people just pay it? Like, on purpose?" "Yep," Mike said. "Nobody wants to deal with the hassle of parking in their driveways or garages. Plus, half the people around here have so much crap in their garages they couldn't park in there even if they wanted to." I shook my head in disbelief. "This is nuts." "Trust me, it gets better," Mike said, smirking. "They tried raising the fine to $75 last month. People lost their minds. There was shouting at the HOA meeting, emails flying everywhere. It was chaos. The HOA backed down, but now people park out there just to spite them." Before I could respond, a commotion from down the block caught my attention. A man in a fluorescent HOA vest was walking from house to house, clipboard in hand, snapping pictures of the cars parked on the street. He wasn't subtle about it either, leaning in close to each vehicle like he was inspecting a crime scene. "What's he doing?" I asked. Mike followed my gaze. "Oh, that's the HOA guy. He's documenting the violations." As if on cue, one of the neighbors stormed out of their house and made a beeline for the man with the clipboard. "You've got some nerve," the neighbor yelled. The HOA guy didn't even flinch. "It's in the bylaws," he said flatly, continuing to jot something down. "Oh, is it?" the neighbor shot back. "Because I don't see you riding up Officer Green's car over there." He pointed to a police car parked halfway up the curb. The HOA guy looked up, then immediately looked back down, scribbling furiously. That only made the neighbor angrier. "This is harassment. You think people have room to park anywhere else?" By now, more neighbors had joined in, spilling out onto their lawns and sidewalks. Some were yelling in agreement. Others were filming the scene on their phones. It was turning into a full-blown spectacle. "Should we do something?" I asked Mike. "Nah," he said casually. "This happens all the time. Cops will show up eventually." Sure enough, 10 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up, lights flashing. The officer stepped out, none other than Officer Green himself. The irony wasn't lost on me. "What's going on here?" Green asked, surveying the growing crowd. The HOA guy didn't miss a beat. "I'm doing my job, issuing fines for street parking violations. Green raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Because it looks like you're inciting a riot. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause, but the tension didn't ease. People were still shouting over each other, accusing the HOA of targeting certain cars, ignoring others, and generally making life miserable. The HOA guy stood his ground, insisting he was just enforcing the rules. I leaned over to Mike. This is insane. How do you live here? Mike shrugged again. Cheap rent. The chaos continued as more cops arrived to calm the crowd, but it was clear nothing was really going to be resolved. The fines would still be issued, the neighbors would still park on the street, and the cycle would repeat itself next month. As I walked back to my car later that night, I couldn't help but wonder how much longer this neighborhood could hold itself together. From the looks of it, not much longer. Probably state-dependent and not as simple as it sounds, but it seems like an HOA can issue parking tickets if they own the road and if there is correct signage and probably other requirements. Mind you, an HOA would not have easy means to collect without booting vehicles or towing them, and doing these things legally is not simple, since it's basically a civil matter. This is basically the same way a private parking lot can issue parking tickets to people that didn't pay to park and aren't displaying a pass. It's not easy for an HOA to do, and it's pretty close to unenforceable. It's likely, and again, state and local government dependent, that an HOA could get the police to enforce safety-related regulations like not blocking fire hydrants or parking on one side to ensure emergency vehicles have a clear passage. In order for them to do that, the HOA would have to add signage for the local government's requirements, and before that, the laws have to be in place allowing the police to do that. Don't know about other places, but in Colorado, the streets that are owned by the HOA, that is, private streets, have the colors inverted on their street signs. That is, public streets may be white letters on a dark background, so private streets are dark letters on a white background. The HOA may only enforce parking rules on their private streets. They're not allowed to enforce anything on public streets. One overzealous HOA tried it once, and either the city government or the state government made it unambiguously clear to them in a very public way that that was not allowed. I can't remember when that was, but it made the evening news statewide. It was the kind of news story that makes you giggle with delight and wish you owned a giant RV. Check with the city to confirm who actually owns the street and what the municipal rules are for parking. If the city owns it, you're not obligated to pay any HOA-imposed fees or tickets for parking on public property. In fact, if the HOA tries to enforce their own parking rules on city streets and starts issuing fines or tickets, you can challenge them legally and potentially sue for overstepping their authority.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.